Here, Federales. You know, the mountain police. If you're the police, where are your badges? Badges? We ain't got no badges. We don't need no badges. I don't have to show you any stinking badges.
Carl Rodriguez is the GMologist, GM extraordinaire, the GMologist.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geomologist Presents. This is a special series that we're going to try to do on my podcast, and we're going to review movies. And who's we? Well, my wife Amy and I are going to review movies.
Hello.
And what we decided to do, we're going to take a couple of genres of movies. We decided on these two genres, Westerns, and then war movies. We're going to tackle Westerns first, and we derived sort of a top 10 list. But we saw this on a YouTube video, and this was the inspiration. And the top 10 list was based on the IMDb score for these movies. So we're going to do them not necessarily in the order of the top 10, but more or less in order. First the Westerns and then the war stories later, in order of release date. So the first movie we're going to talk about is
The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, starring
Yes.
Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah. And The Treasure of the Sierra Madre is a 1948 Western film. Somehow it is thrown into the Western genre. We can discuss that. It's written and directed by John Huston and is a adapted screenplay based on B. Travern's 1927 novel of the same name, Treasure of the Sierra Madre. So it follows the exploits, adventures, really, of two downtrodden men played by Humphrey Bogart and Tim Holt. And they're joined later with an old grizzled prospector played by Walter Huston, who's actually, yes, the name is not a coincidence. This is John Huston's father, and they search for gold in Mexico. So this movie has won quite a few awards.
Oh, absolutely. Just as a side note, did you know that Humphrey Bogart is one of my favorite actors?
Are you asking me or asking?
Of course I'm
Or
asking.
is this a rhetorical?
No, it could be rhetorical, but he is.
I think I realized that he was because you love Casablanca, which
I
actually,
do.
incidentally, could be like a war movie. Maybe we'll have to review that one in the future.
Could be. I have some interesting facts on that one. But as
Well-
far as the awards, they did at the Academy Awards get Best Director for John Huston, Best Supporting Actor for Walter Huston, and Best Screenplay for John Huston.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Houston or Huston. We're mispronouncing it, but either way. So Henry
I
Blake,
apologize.
it was also nominated for Best Picture, but it did not win. And I think in the Golden Globes, though, it kind of took Best Picture, Best Supporting, and Best Director honors. So I thought that was pretty cool. So it was nominated also for the Best Film from any source by the British Academy of Film as well.
And
So-
the New York Film Critics Circle Awards gave it Best Film, Best Director, and Best Actor.
Right. So I mean, I guess my initial impression, and I'm going to say it, I don't know why I have a aversion, but I do. I have an aversion to black and white movies, to classic movies, but this one really kept me engaged. And we'll go through the plot and starting with the cast, but then we'll go through the plot and then talk about our impressions of the movie, maybe some themes that we got out of it. But and of course, since this is a gaming podcast, we're going to talk about a potential game play that you could work. How would it work? I mean, for some of these that we're going to discuss as Westerns, you can pick like any Western you like, but some Western role-playing games or other role-playing games might be better than others. So really, I think we kind of saw that with a lot of these Westerns that we've seen so far. So anyway, do you want to introduce the cast or do you want me to introduce the cast?
You can introduce the cast if you'd like. I just love Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah. So Humphrey Bogart plays Fred Dobbs. Walter Huston is Howard. We just get his name as Howard. That's the old man. Tim Holt is Bob Curtin. We have another. We're introduced to a couple other people of note. Bruce Bennett is James Cody, who's someone that comes along during the movie. Barton McLean acts as Pat McCormick, who is one of the initial foils in the movie. And you heard at the top of the show the famous Stinkin' Badges quote, as done by Alfonso Bedoya, who plays Gold Hat, the leader of the bandits that the crew runs into now and again. So the other kind of interesting note of people, or a couple notes of people that were in the movie, were Robert Blake. So Alfalfa Beretta was in the movie, although it was uncredited at the time, but he played the Mexican boy in Tampico who sold lottery tickets. And then John Huston actually makes a cameo as well, and he's the American in the white suit in Tampico that Dobbs grips for money a couple times. So I thought that was pretty interesting. There really is no female actors in this movie.
No, I did notice that. But I would also point out, I don't think it's missed.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if there is there is some sort of scale of that type, but we probably won't go into that now because it really doesn't apply. It was made in 1948, probably a product of the times. But like Amy just didn't seem bothered by it, so I would be a SJW if I were bothered by it. So let's get into the plot. Do you want me to start, and then you can fill in stuff as I miss?
That's up to you.
Right. So
that's fine by me.
So we watched this like early in the fall last year, but I felt like I had to watch it again to really get down the movie, and it still engaged me, even though it is a pretty decent running time. It's 2 hours and 6 minutes. I feel there might be a few things that could be cut out that are maybe a little overdone, but not the scenes themselves. I don't think there was any superfluous scene, although some of the scenes could have been cut down, and maybe we'll get into that. We'll see. So the movie starts out in 1925 in the Mexican town of Tampico, and Fred Dobbs and Bob Curtin are two broken down American drifters. They're down on their luck. They don't have any money, but they get a job with this contractor, Pat McCormick, to help construct oil derricks. They make a bit of money, but then when McCormick skips out on them without paying them, and then they're like, oh man, this guy skipped out on us, and that's where they go to a flop house because they don't have any money, and they encounter Howard, this old vagrant who's very talkative. And we introduce here Walter Houston's gift in this character of Howard for blather. He just talks and talks and talks, and it's a very interesting brogue that he has developed for this character in this movie. And you have to really, I think Howard really says the most poignant lines about what I feel is it when it's all said and done, a morality play. What do you think, Amy?
I do. I think he plays a character that could be seen as perhaps your conscience.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, appearances, he's just a loquacious ex-miner, talks about gold prospecting, the perils of striking it rich, etc. They do run into McCormick, and there's a little fight scene there, so they collect their back wages. And I thought it was very interesting. They don't like rob him, they just take the money that is owed. So I think initially, even though they want justice and what is fair, but neither man is seen as Dobbs and Curtin. Neither man is seen as like immoral at this point.
Not at this point,
right?
But ultimately, they were working for $8 a day, which I believe is about $122 in today's money.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. That's a good sum. It's kind of interesting.
Not for 14 to 16 hours of labor. It's probably not that great. It's close to minimum wage, really. right?
Probably. Depends on what state you're in, though.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not a lot of money, and that's the emphasis. But then Dobbs strikes it rich in the jackpot lottery, sold by Robert Blake's uncredited character, the little Mexican
Which I
boy.
would like to point out, that little boy is quite a salesman.
Yeah,
He did not take no once, twice, three. He finally, on the fourth time, got him to buy the ticket
even got water thrown in his face, right?
and still came back.
So Dobbs hits a small jackpot because they only put 20 centavos in, and he won like 400 pesos out of it. But that gives him, Curtin, and Howard enough money to go prospecting. So they depart by train from Tampico. And then there's it seems kind of like unnecessary at the time, but I do really appreciate John Huston's direction and his use of Chekhov's gun, type of trope, or not trope, but screenwriting and then directing style, because he introduces something that becomes poignant later in the movie. And these are this bandit attack led by Gold Hat, north of Durango, and these three men, they they shoot at these guys and help drive them off. Um, so what did you think of that scene, Amy?
I thought it was quite interesting because I think it was setting up things for the movie coming up that we should probably pay a little closer attention to.
Yeah, I mean, it does go pretty quickly, which is good. I mean, maybe they could have cut down a little bit. There's several exchanges of fighting, but maybe it wasn't overly long, and maybe I just, but maybe I think you're right. I think maybe it's fun. It could be fun on the second viewing or third viewing, to pick up like who the bandits are exactly. I mean, Gold Hat is the leader of the bandits, is pretty noticeable, but the other ones, right, they kind of fall into the background, and generally speaking.
But I think they might be the same bandits that by the time they got to the town to get their provisions were being frisked and literally digging their own graves.
Right. They had captured some of these bandits, and then they made them dig their own graves. So the men, they get their supplies, they head into the remote Sierra Madre. It's kind of funny that Howard, even though being the oldest, is the hardiest here. And then I like this too. I don't think they dwelled so much on the travel, though it seemed to be a long time. I feel like it was more than several days, but they did it as a really good like little travel montage, through desert and rain and cutting through jungle. I thought that was pretty good. Like I said, I don't think it was really filler, and John Huston does a good job of just fast forwarding the action, but showing the harsh conditions of the travel.
I also thought it was quite funny that the two younger gentlemen were lagging behind, hiding under bushes, trying to drink water, and the old man is just like a mountain goat climbing up the mountain.
Yep,
And I
yep.
thought that was quite funny.
Right. So finally, we get to the mountains, and they start prospecting, and it's hard work, really hard work, and they start to amass a fortune in what's called placer gold, right? I think, and it's effectively gold dust that needs to be refined, but they talk about how much money it is, and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of interesting that here is where we start seeing, I think, the beginnings of the greed. Do you want to talk about Dobbs and his distrust?
Well, somewhat. I think Dobbs' major turn happened when the mine collapsed on him and he hit his head. And I think there he started feeling like everyone was out to get him, to steal everything. Everything needed to be split equally and hidden
Right.
on their own. And he became suspect of the other three, even though they weren't doing anything. At one point in time, they were even trying to get him to not stick his hand under the rock where there was a poisonous lizard.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that seems to be like right after that like accident in the mine, he starts changing. I don't know if it's necessarily because he got hit on the head like a whatever in the 1940s they thought could cause like a change in someone's character, but maybe it could even just be like the thought of mortality. Oh my gosh, I almost died, so now I really need to to take care of myself, take care of my own. But I thought that also showed that Curtin, in a way, is like a good guy, because Curtin is like, he gets like, oh, Curtin risks his life to go into the mine and help Dobbs get out. So I thought that was pretty cool. So
It
I
was
think,
very interesting.
yeah. And shortly after that, this is when they introduced this Texas guy named Cody, and he and Curtin have a discussion, but he eventually follows Curtin back to the encampment, and then they kind of try to step around what they're actually doing there, but Cody seems pretty smart and he's not fooled. He proposes to join their outfit, and then they want to kill him, right?
Well, he gave him three options.
Yeah.
He could either let him in as a partner, but he wouldn't take anything that they had already gotten. They could kill him, but because it was all three of them, they'd have to kill him all at the same time. Or they could just let him go, and he promised not to turn them in, because I guess they had to have rights to go digging in those mountains.
Yeah, I think that was a little of a veiled threat, because he said he'd leave, but then of course they'd ask him where he went and he couldn't lie, so eventually someone would come up here and take their claim anyway. So I mean, he's trying to he put him in a bit of a pickle. As soon as they decide they're going to kill him, though, that's when Gold Hat and the rest of the bandits arrive. And it's a really, I thought it for 1940s, late 1940s, I think it's a pretty good and exciting gun battle. It's pretty tense. I mean, they're really good at having, bullets ricochet everywhere. And that's actually where they have the famous line of the stinking badges line in there, which I think more people, I didn't realize this when I first saw Treasure of the Sierra Madre. The stinking badges, for me, the touchstone is for Blazing Saddles, Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles, but clearly Mel Brooks got it from Treasure of the Sierra Madre. So I thought that was a pretty good, in Blazing Saddles, a good callback to this famous movie Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
Oh, yes.
So they a tense gunfight ensues, and Cody is killed from this, and they think that the bandits got him now. They killed one of them over on the four. They're still outnumbered, but then the Federales arrive and chase the bandits off.
Oh, yes. And Cody was shot once through the neck, I think they said.
Yeah. And it's interesting. They kind of look through his effects, and they see that he has a family and his wife back in Texas. So I think that's, and again, it keeps showing, it's how seemingly Howard is like immune to greed, and Curtin, though tempted, seems to choose the right path, and they both agree to give part of their share to Cody's family. But what does Dobbs do?
He says no.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, I think at that moment in time, Dobbs was so far into his greed that he couldn't see anything other than money.
Or people trying to take his money, right?
I don't know. Everybody was an adversary to him.
Right.
Even himself.
Yeah. So because of this conflict, they decide to take off, cut their losses and take off. But then Howard, during the journey back, they're heading to Durango, etc., and to try to get money for their hard worked gains. But then Howard is called away to assist a local village with a seriously ill boy who almost drowned.
Mm-hmm. He fell in the well.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if this is. Howard he's successful, and Howard dismisses this as like, well, I just some old Boy Scout tricks that I learned. But do you think they're trying that Houston, or even the original author? I've never read the book, but do you think Houston was trying to put some sort of supernatural ability on Howard, since you mentioned that he's like the conscience, like almost that the angel telling you, what is good, what the good choice is? Do you think they're trying to ascribe some supernatural to Howard?
Not certain. I felt like the whole movie was a depiction of an internal conflict on the screen. So like the fight between good and evil with the old man being the conscience. Because if the old man wasn't there, neither good nor bad could equal out the other. And it seemed like bad got worse, Humphrey Bogart's character. And as soon as he came back into it, the calm came. So I kind of feel as if, like in the Bible, when they sent Jesus off to wander through the desert for 40 days, they took the old man away to see how these two would pair on their own. Are they going to learn from what they were taught or what he said to him? Or would they turn on each other? And they turned.
Right, that's what happens, right? So Dobbs and Curtin argue. They can't control the burrows, and then after some fights and shenanigans with Humphrey Bogart, to me, doing a great job of sort of degrading, right? Houston does such a great job of showing the close up facial expressions of the changes from Dobbs in Tampico going out of his way and spending the last amount of his money to get a haircut and a shave, and now being like a wild man and crazy. Right. So this greed has really possessed him. And eventually he does shoot Curtin. Right. Curtin
Although not well.
Yeah, he shoots Curtin and takes all the gold, and Curtin somehow survives, and the Indians with Howard find him. And then Dobbs flees with all the gold. So we're almost done, and that's pretty amazing, right? So this is a movie that is 2 hours and 6 minutes, but you could see that it's kind of flowed really well, I think.
Absolutely. I think when he finally is coming down the mountain, he thinks everyone else is dead and he's on his own. He still claims to the bandits that found him, oh, but they're coming on horses. He still feels like he's going to be rescued from himself.
Right.
Instead of realizing that, I think the whole movie was trying to get to the biggest treasures in our life are not what we are amassing, but who we're with.
Yeah. I don't know if Dobbs has a catharsis, though. I think what happens is Dobbs, he flees, he goes to this watering hole because he's like, he even leaves, one of the precious burros is left to die, and the Curtin and Howard and the Indios that they found are like pursuing them, and they kind of go by this. But Dobbs flees, and then he gets to his watering hole, and he's confronted by Gold Hat and his men, and they just kill him.
Well, after they determine that everything in the sacks is just dust, and why is he carrying around so much dust, and then they just dump it all out.
Yeah, and it's scattered by a wind, right? So they try to, but I mean, Gold Hat and his gang also get their comeuppance. It's one of Amy's favorite words.
It is.
So Gold Hat and the gang, after they kill Dobbs, they try to sell the stolen burros in town, and a kid recognizes the brand, and also the boots from Dobbs that the bandits are wearing, reports them to the authorities, and then these guys are captured, dig their graves, and are summarily executed by the Federalists. So, but then Howard and Curtin, they get there, not in the nick of time, right? I think that's a really interesting difference. Maybe like you would think there's no happy ending, although it's a bittersweet ending, right? Curtin and Howard have their life. They've learned a lot. They learned about themselves, but they lose the gold in a dust storm, and they only find empty bags.
Oh, absolutely. So what is the old adage? You can't take it with you, right?
Yeah, you can't take it with you, right? So
dust in the wind. And that's really what it was.
Yeah, that's really what happened. So Howard decides to return to the village, and because he's got a great gig there now, Howard does. And then they sell the recovered property, and Curtin decides he's going to go to the U.S. where he seeks out Curtin's widow. Yeah, I think there's something else I wanted to mention, but I can't think of what else I wanted to mention throughout this last little bit of scene. But yeah, I think I really enjoyed the movie. I clearly the corrupting influence of greed is a strong theme, like Amy has highlighted. And I mean, I don't believe that the movie was ever about gold and the prospecting, right?
No, it's about your internal fight with greed.
Right.
Which, if you think about it, is still relevant today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I thought it was a really good movie. I think one of the ironies in our even in with this movie and in our discussion about the Western genre, the top 10 Westerns, is that this is really not set in the classical Old West. It's the earliest movie that we're going to discuss chronologically as by release date, but it's actually takes place in 1925, which is way beyond the traditional Old West, post postbellum, post Civil War, from the late 1860s to the 1890s or so. So so I think
It,
that's pretty interesting.
I thought it was very interesting. And it's before the Great Depression, where you can say everybody lost everything yet again.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting because well, I guess I mean, right, the movie takes place in before the Great Depression, but the release date was actually after World War II. So maybe it is like some sort of morality to kind of remind people that material goods aren't as important. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe
I don't know,
we're reading way too much into it. So
possibly,
so
but you
that's
know what I'm not reading too much into?
what's that?
I think this would be a great game with Call of Cthulhu.
Oh, yeah, Amy segues into, like I said, this is a gaming podcast. So uh what game would this movie, that's the right word?
Possibly.
If you wanted to play out Treasure of the Sierra Madre or something like it, what game would you use? And Amy suggests Call of Cthulhu. So why would you choose Call of Cthulhu?
A, I get the most luck, and I would definitely have to spend it. But B, it's very investigative. And I feel as though this movie lends itself that way. You have to find, shall we say, the golden ticket, and then you have to investigate, why didn't I get paid, and find out where the person is to get your money and then find different places to meet up your little party. I guess that's similar to D&D, but I just think Call of Cthulhu would be a better issue because you never know what demons are out there.
Yeah, I think you could use like Call of Cthulhu or BRP, the basic role playing, and then without the sort of mythos horror, but more with it like the psychological, like a psychological horror
Mhm.
would work. And sanity would be driven by you know
How much gold you have? Because I think Humphrey Bogart's character lost all his sanity towards the end, and it cost him his life.
well, there's definitely like some very stressful situations, even going out there, hearing the strange noises in the desert and jungle. um
Finding the fool's gold,
yeah, the fool's gold,
lack of water,
yes, the survival, the interaction with Cody, the fight with the bandits,
the
yeah,
fight within each other.
yeah, and the
I
fight,
mean,
and
they
then
were fighting
all
all over
those,
the place.
well, all those stressful things can build up, and then I think you could mechanically have like the stress or sanity rolls, what they use in Call of Cthulhu. But you could kind of change the terminology a little to reflect, I think, more of a psychological horror. And I mean, back in, I would say, the one of the editions of Call of Cthulhu, the that took place in the 90s, they did some like slasher flick type Call of Cthulhu adventures where they did not have any mythos involvement. So I definitely think it could be done, in that sort of vein, because you do have some violence, some PvP type of violence, obviously. So with Dobbs, you're trying to kill Curtin, etc. So I
You could
think
even put it in the 1920s, the Call of
yeah,
Cthulhu
yeah,
1920s.
right, Call of Cthulhu 1920s, right? So again, I think without the mythos, so those, of course, you could add some strange supernaturalness to the whole thing with, especially with the introduction of the Indios, you could kind of throw some twists and curves and stuff like that about. It could be kind of interesting. Um, Even with the bandidos, with the bandits, you could throw in some mythos twists or supernatural twists if you wanted to. I think that would be kind of cool.
But somebody has to say, I don't need to show you any stinking badges.
Yep.
You have to say it.
No, not with the accent though. Anyway,
Maybe.
so do you have any other comments? I think we're done. I mean, it's short, sweet, cool
It is
review.
short and sweet. I would really encourage people to go find it.
Mhm.
You can stream it through the Library of Congress, and see it for free. You don't need to pay for it. It's a great movie, and I do believe there's a couple of colorized versions out there if black and white is not going to work for you. But I think the film being in black and white really does show the good and evil of different things because he used that light pattern in the movie to show it
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, very much like all the shadows and the black and white, the lighting that you use to show their change of demeanor, right? So like
Mhm.
in Tampico, they're very optimistic, everything's very bright. And of course, towards the end, especially in the Dobbs curtain final conflict there, there's all these shadows and and dark, kind of semi-darkness, so it's hard to get what's going on. And then even when Dobbs and the Bandidos have their final confrontation, right? It's kind of a hazy and there's
Very hazy
it's shadowy, right? So
and dark, but it is bright and light when they're digging their graves.
yeah, which is interesting, very interesting. Yeah,
It's just something to point out how at that point in time they used everything to bring home a message in the film. Just my thoughts on it.
mhm. So yeah, pretty cool. So just as a note, on Rotten Tomatoes, this film is one of the few that has an approval rating of 100%. And
Mhm.
it was one of the top listed IMDb ratings. So that's pretty interesting. Remade but never duplicated, this darkly humorous morality tale represents John Huston at his finest, says the quote by Rotten Tomatoes, actually. So, well, thank you for listening. I think I'm gonna close it out, Amy. Uh, I do have a outro, unless you have anything else you want to add.
Well, I mean, I would just tell our listeners to keep an ear open because the next movie that we're going to be reviewing is High Noon.
Yes, yes, High Noon, which I was again a movie that surprised me that I liked and was engaged with.
Oh, don't
Um,
give it away.
I won't. Um, so anyway, thanks for listening. Please comment. It'd be great to get some feedback on these classic westerns. What game would you use to run the Treasure of the Sierra Madre or an adventure like it? Um, I think it might not. I mean, Amy and I are going to go along on this ride. We might have a guest or two coming on with us to discuss these movies. So uh, keep an ear out for that as well. Um, we have 9 more movies to review in the Western genre, and just to keep it simple, about 10 war story war movies that are out there too. So thank you for listening. This has been the Geomologist Presents. TJ Drennan does the intro and outro music. Amy usually does a cover clip art, but we're gonna have a poster of a Treasure of the Sierra Madre here as a cover art for this podcast. And I think that's it. You can contact me. How do you contact me? How do you give feedback? The best way I think is to DM me a message that you've recorded on Discord, but you could also send that message through email to geomologist@gmail.com. I have a SpeakPipe account that will be linked in the show notes.
They can
And I
also
think,
find us on YouTube.
and you can also find this on YouTube as a Geomologist Presents. We do actual play there. We haven't decided at this point if we're going to put this on YouTube, but maybe we'll put like a duplicate, just audio only on YouTube, or the base audio that you see that we're recording while we're recording here. So, or base video with not a lot of frills. We'll see. We don't know yet. It was really fun. I think it was a really good discussion.
And
And
a great reason to have a bowl of popcorn.
that's true. And without further ado, we'll say
Good night and good rolling.